Hello everyone and assalamu alaikum. This is a request based video on intelligence test. So basically, as I've discussed in my previous video, that I got a request on intelligence test, and I decided to divide the video in three parts. The part one was all about defining intelligence. The part two is all about theories of intelligence, and part three is all about intelligence test. So basically, intelligence test is quite a detailed topic to discuss. So having knowledge about what actually intelligence is very important. So I decided to divide this lecture in three parts. So I've already discussed the part one. I've already completed part one of intelligence. If you haven't watched that video, I have given a link in description. And in this video, we'll discuss about the theories of intelligence. And the third part, we will discuss about intelligence test, in which we'll know what actual intelligence tests are, how many intelligence tests are there, and what are the importance of intelligence tests, and we will dive deep into that topic. So this video is all about theories of intelligence. When you get the topic of intelligence, when you know what actual intelligence is, it will be more easy for you to understand the intelligence test. So this video is all about the intelligence theories of intelligence. Basically, by studying the various definitions, we can understand how intelligence operates, what type of behavior of an individual stamps him as intelligent or unintelligent. So the theories of intelligence propagated by psychologists from time to time have tried to uncover the components of elements of intelligence. So basically, there are two main categories of the theories of intelligence. The first one is about the factor theories of intelligence, and the second one is about the cognitive theories of intelligence. So in factor theories of intelligence, there are those theories which have defined intelligence in terms of factors, how intelligence is dependent on different factors and what factor play a role in intelligence. Whereas in cognitive theories of intelligence, you will get to know what cognition play a role in intelligence, what is the relation between cognition and intelligence. So let's start with the factor theories of intelligence. In factor theories of intelligence, we will discuss 7 theories. The first one is about the unitary theory of intelligence, or unitary theory or monarchic theory. Then after that, we'll discuss the anarchic theory or multifactor theory, then Spearman's 2-factor theory and group factor theory, sampling theory. The 6th one will be the Vernon's hierarchical theory, and the last 7th one will be the Guilford theory involving a model of intellect. So let's start with the unitary theory or monarchic theory. So basically, this theory, the oldest in origin, holds that intelligence consists of one factor, a fund of intellectual competence, which is universal to all activities of the individual. So for example, a man who has energy can move as much in one direction as he can in another. So similarly, if he has a fund of intelligence, he can utilize it in any sphere of life and depending on it. So be as successful in one sphere as in another. But the ideas propagated by this theory are not, however, borne out in real life situation. It may be seen, for instance, that a child who has or who is good in mathematics may not, despite genuine interest and hard work, or be able to do as well in civics. Well, an above average performer in a laboratory may not exhibit comparable competence in learning a language. So this goes to show that intelligence is not just a unitary factor, and the unitary theory is therefore not acceptable. So this was the criticism on the first and the oldest theory of intelligence, that was the unitary theory or monarchic theory of intelligence. Then the second theory is about the anarchic theory or multifactor theory. So the main propagator of this theory was E.L. Thorndike. As its name suggests, this theory, also called the atomistic theory of intelligence, and considers intelligence to be a combination of numerous separate elements or factors, each one being a minute element of one ability, and there is then no such thing as general intelligence, which means a single factor, and there are only many highly independent specific abilities which goes on into accomplishment of different tasks. But there is some criticism on this theory, that is that monarchic and anarchic theories thus hold two extreme views. Just as we cannot assume good intelligence to be guarantee of success in all spheres of human life, we cannot also assume that with certain specific types of abilities, an individual would be entirely successful in a particular area and completely unsuccessful in other areas. So, in the context, Murphy in 1968 says that there is a certain positive relationship between brightness in one field and brightness in another, and so on. So thus we cannot conclude that there should be a common factor for all tasks. So the failure to explain this phenomena gave birth to Spearman's two-factor theory. So basically, this theory was advocated by Spearman in 1923, and according to him, each intellectual activity involves a general factor G, which it shares all intellectual activities and has a specific factor S which belongs to it alone. So in this way, he suggested that there is something which might be called general intelligence. A sort of general mental energy running through all the different tasks. And the amount of G in a person depends on the amount of cortical, or we can say cerebral cortex energy present, and the maximum quantum of this is fixed. So how much of this energy one utilizes depends on the motivation, available environment, and previous experience, etc. So in addition to this general factor, there are specific combinations for which an individual which give an individual the ability to deal with specific problems. And for instance, an individual's performance in Hindi is partly due to his general intelligence and partly due to the specific aptitude for a language which he might possesses, which is G plus S1. So G is the general ability and S is the specific ability or specific intelligence of a person. So general factor, which is the common factor, and specific factor, which is the S. So G plus S1, or in mathematics, his performance may be the result of G plus S2, and in drawing it may be due to the G plus S3, and so on. So the factor G is present in all specific activities, and there was some kind of a criticism on this theory too. So this two-factor theory of Spearman's has been criticized on various grounds. First one is that Spearman held that intelligence may be expressed in terms of two factors, but as we have seen that there are not only two but several factors, which was G plus S1, G plus S2, G plus S3, which means that there are not two general factors according to Spearman's two-factor theory. And number two was that according to Spearman's, each job required some specific ability, but this view was untenable because it implied that there is nothing common to different jobs except a general factor, and professions such as those of nurses, compounders, and doctors could not be put in one group. And in fact, the factors S1, S2, S3, and so on are not mutually exclusive, so they overlap and give rise to certain common factors. So the idea of overlapping and grouping resulted in a new theory called the group factor theory. So the four factors, not common to all intellectual abilities but common to certain activities, comprising a group. The term group factor was suggested by a prominent among the propagators of this theory was L. Thurston, an American psychologist. So while working on test of primary mental abilities, he came to the conclusion that certain mental operations have common primary factor which gives them psychological and functional unity, and which differentiates them from other mental operations. So these mental operations constitute a group factor. So there are a number of groups of mental abilities, and each of these groups has its own primary factor. So Thurston and his associate have actually identified 9 such factors, and that are the verbal factor. The first one is concerned with comprehension of verbs, verbal relationships, or verbal relation, words, and ideas. For example, words or ideas. Whereas the spatial factor is involved in any task in which the subject manipulates an object imaginatively in space. For example, depth perception. Whereas the numerical factor is basically concerned with ability to do numerical calculations rapidly and accurately. For example, division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction. Whereas the fourth one was about the memory factor. And memory factor is basically, it involves the ability to memorize quickly. For example, memorization. And the fifth one is about word fluency. Word fluency is involved whenever the subject is asked to think of isolated words at a rapid rate. For example, rapid rate thinking. And the sixth one was about the inductive reasoning factor. It is the ability to draw inferences or conclusions on the basis of specific instances. Whereas the deductive reasoning is the ability to make use of generalized results. And the eighth one was about the perceptual factor. It is the ability to perceive objects accurately, for example, perception. The last one, the ninth one, was about the problem solving ability factor, and it is the ability to solve problems with independent factors, for example, problem solving ability. But this theory also faced criticism. The weakest aspect of the group factor theory was that it discarded the concept of common factor, and it did not take Thurston long to realize his mistake and to reveal a general factor in addition to the group factors. And the next theory was about the sampling theory, the fifth one, and this theory was propagated by the G.H. Thomson in 1939, a British psychologist. So it assumes that the mind is made up of several independent bonds or elements, and any specific test or school activity samples some of these bonds. It is possible that 2 or more test samples sample and utilize the sample bonds, and a general common factor can be said to exist among them. So it is possible that some other test samples different bonds, in which case the tests have nothing common and each of them is pacific. So the sampling theory combines several theoretical viewpoints. In that it appears to be similar to Thorndike's multifactor theory, except that he concedes to the practical usefulness of a concept like G, and at the same time Thomson seems to maintain that the concept of group factor, which is capital G instead of small g, is equal to practical usefulness. Then there is another theory, which was Vernon's hierarchical theory, and the British psychologist P.F. Vernon in 1950 suggested a hierarchical structure for the organization of intelligence, as you can see here. Now, according to him, the mind is a kind of hierarchy. in which the capital G, which is the group factor, is the most prominent mental ability. That is an overall factor measured through intelligence test. So under G, we have two major groups termed as VEG and KM, now representing two main kinds of mental ability. Well, the first group factor, which is VET, is basically concerned with the verbal, numerical, and educational abilities, and the other major group of the KM is connected with practical, mechanical, spatial, and physical abilities. So the two groups can be divided into minor groups, and ultimately, these minor factors may be further subdivided into various specific factors related with minute specific mental ability. Then there is the seventh one, which is the Guilford's theory involving a model of intellect. Basically, Guilford in 1961 and his associates, while working in the psychological laboratory at the University of Southern California, developed a model of intelligence on the basis of the factor analysis. Factor analytical research studies conducted by them, which involved a number of intelligence tests, and they concluded that every mental process or intellectual activity can be described in terms of three basic dimensions or parameters. For example, known as operation, which is the act of thinking, and then contents, which is a term in which we think, such as words or symbols, then the product, the idea we come up with, and each of these parameters or operations, contents and products may be further subdivided into some specific factors or elements. As you can see right here, each of these parameters subdivided into specific factors or elements. Now, through his later research, Guilford further expanded his cube-shaped model of intellect to include 150 factors by dividing the figural factor of the content into two separate categories, the visual and auditory. So the model consisting of 150 may be dramatically represented as divided into two separate categories, the visual and auditory. So basically, according to Guilford, the structure of human intelligence can be divided or can be viewed in terms of three basic parameters with their divisions into a specific number of factors. So basically, this was all about the factor theory. In factor theory, if we talk about the conclusion of the Guilford's theory, so at least one factor from each category of these parameters has to be present in any specific intellectual activity or mental task. So let us illustrate this with example A. For example, a child is asked to determine the day of the week in a particular date, which with the help of a calendar. So the task involves operation like convergent thinking, memory, and cognition. So in carrying out these operation, he has to make use of the contents. In this particular case, he will make the use of semantics, which is reading and understanding, of the printed words and figures indicating days and dates of a particular month and calendar. And by carrying out mental operations with the help of the content, he will finally arrive at the product. And the day of the week to which the date in question refers represents the measure known as relations. And he may further transform and apply this knowledge to identify the days for the contiguous dates or vice versa. So the theories discussed so far in the broad category of factor theories of intelligence, as these employ factors analysis analysis technique for identification of factors, common abilities, which constitute of one's intelligence. These theories exhibit wide variation in terms of numbers of factors that they consider important. So the next theory is about the cognitive theories of intelligence. So these theories of intelligence try to analyze and describe intelligence in terms of certain fundamental cognitive processes, and the important theories falling in these categories are the Cattell and Horn's theory of intelligence, Jensen's theory of mental functioning, Campion and Brown's theory of intelligence, Sternberg's information processing theory of intelligence, Gardner's theories of multiple intelligence. So these are the 5 theories which are included in cognitive theories of intelligence. So let's start with the Cattell-Horn's theory of intelligence. So basically, it was propagated or proposed by Cattell and Horn. They proposed theories of intelligence by distinguishing between 2 types of intelligence, which is the fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. So, although viewed as different and distinct, these 2 types of intelligence intermingle and interact to produce overall intelligence. The first one is about the fluid intelligence. So fluid intelligence is considered to be the mental capacity of an individual, which is required for learning and problem solving, and it is dependent on neurological development and is relatively free from the influences of education and culture. In other words, it is derived more from biological and genetic factors and less influenced by training and experiences. So this type of intelligence is put to use when facing new and strange situations requiring adaptation, comprehension, reading, problem solving, and identifying relationship, and etc. So it reaches full development by the end of individual's adolescence. Whereas the second one is about the crystallized intelligence, on the other hand, is not a function of one's neurological development and therefore is not innate or unlearned like fluid intelligence. Rather, it is spatially learned and is therefore dependent on education and culture, and it involves one's acquired fund of general knowledge consisting of knowledge and skills essential for performing different tasks in one day-to-day life. So it can be identified through one's fund of vocabulary, general knowledge of the world affairs, and the knowledge of customs, traditions and rituals, manner of behaving in the society, handling of machine and tools, craftsmanship and art, so computation and keeping of accounts, and various other such tasks requiring knowledge and experience and practice. Thus, while fluid intelligence is characterized by a relatively high degree of culture, education, experience, and training-free performance in abstraction, thinking, reasoning, and imagination, whereas crystallized intelligence is known for its evolution through experience, training, and intelligence with one's environment over a number of years. So that is why it is found to continue to increase throughout one's lifespan. So the next one is about the Jensen's theory of mental functioning. So basically, author Jensen, the author Jensen in 1969 propounded the theory of mental functioning. So according to this theory, the functioning of one's mind depend upon the type and degree of intelligence one possesses. So Jensen described one's intelligence as being composed of 2 types of abilities, the associative ability and conceptual ability. So the first category, which is the associative ability, includes one's ability to remember, reproduce, identify, discriminate, synthesize, associate, assimilate, transfer, and apply, etc. Such abilities are usually measured by means of intelligence tests items or tasks involving free recall, recognition, serial learning, free and controlled association, learning, selection, and discrimination, etc. Whereas conceptual ability, on the other hand, involves one's ability to carry out higher order of thinking, reasoning, analyzing, and the capacity of problem solving. So that is why this type of abilities are said to be measured through tasks, and these items requiring the use of conceptual ability, abstract reasoning, novelty of situation, and methods as also analytical and divergent thinking. According to Jensen, associative ability is relate to biological maturation and show little variation among social classes and races, whereas the conceptual ability, however, are dependent on education and culture and are therefore responsible for the observed differences in conceptual reasoning and abilities in social classes and learning social classes and races. So Jensen also gave this attribute of intelligence in an individual is basically an individual, according to Jensen, is two-dimensional, having intellectual breadth and intellectual altitude. So basically, what describes as breadth of one's intelligence consists of the intellectual fund of general information, vocabulary, practice, and skills of handling tools and machines, and ways and manners of behaving, society, etc. So it usually depends upon one's action with one's surroundings. So the attitudes, values, interest one possesses, the experience and training one receives, and the things and treatments one obtained from his environment, thus described as function of one's learning. Education and culture is similar to Cattell's concept of crystallization or crystallized intelligence, whereas the altitude component of one's intelligence, on the other hand, depends on innate and it depends more on innate and neurological factor than or learning, training, and environmental influences. So it appears that it imparts altitude to one's intellectual structure by involving the relatively high-level cognitive abilities like abstract and divergent thinking, logical reasoning, imagination and conceptualization, problem solving, and etc. So a person's intelligence is thus said to be built up on the base provided by this intellectual breadth and height maintained by this intellectual altitude. How intelligently he will function in a given situation depends upon his innate basic abilities and the required mental functioning. So the third theory is the Campion and Brown's theory of intelligence. And according to the Campion and Brown's theory of intelligence, the most recent acceptable theory of intelligence has been put forward by the American psychologist Robert Sternberg in 1985. I was talking about the Campion and Brown's theory of intelligence. So the American psychologist, the recent theory, the acceptable theory of intelligence, which was put forward by the American psychologist Robert Sternberg in 1985, is basically Sternberg's information processing theory of intelligence. But the Campion and Brown's theory of intelligence is basically it was developed by an American psychologist, Joe Campion and Anne Brown in 1979. They developed a theory of intelligence, and according to which one's intelligence is composed of a two-part system. The first part is basically biologically based architectural system, and the second is environmentally influenced executive system. So basically the architectural system works as a base for one's intellectual functioning, and it includes such basic mental abilities as the memory capacity, the rate of loss of memory, the ability of proper information processing, etc. And the executive system works as storehouse. The executive system, it works as a storehouse of knowledge and information, and is said to include the cognitive abilities like the cognitive schemata, cognitive learning strategies, and metacognition. That is the awareness of one's ability to plan, evaluate, and regulate learning. So the executive system works on a higher level and is responsible for higher order mental functioning, and the abilities comprising this system are dependent on training and experience. So the abilities comprising the architectural system, on the other hand, are innate and biological, and are less and are thus relatively they are relatively independent of the education, culture, and training influence. Whereas the Sternberg, which I have a little bit discussed with the theory number 3, but is actually theory number 4, which is Sternberg's information processing theory of intelligence. So basically the most recent, again, receptible theory of intelligence, which was put forward by an American psychologist, Robert Sternberg, in 1985, and by adopting an information processing approach to cognition or problem solving. The information processing approach is the manner in which one proceeds to perform a mental task or solve a problem from the time one comes across it. So gathers information and makes use of the information for completing a task or solving the problem in hand. So basically, according to Robert Sternberg, the theory propagated by him, the Sternberg, identified the following steps, which are shown here in the way one processes information. For example, if a person is processing information, he or she follows the following step. The first one is about encoding, which is identifying the relevant available information in the mind, and then inferring, which is drawing necessary inferences, in which you draw necessary inferences. Then you start doing mapping, which is step 3, establishing the relationship between a previous situation and the present one, and then application by applying the inferred relationship, and justification, the 5th step, in which there is justification or justifying the analyzed solution of the problem, and the last one is response, which is providing the best possible solution. So these were the steps proposed by the Sternberg information processing theory of intelligence. And according to Sternberg, considering the way human being process information in executing a mental task, so he laid down a triarchic structure for his theory of intelligence based on 3 sub-theories, namely component theory, component sub-theory, which is further divided into meta-component, performance components, knowledge acquisition component, etc. So these were the three subdivision of the component subtheory, and the second one is about the experimental subtheory, and the last one is contextual subtheory. So A, B, C. The A one is component subtheory, then the B is experimental subtheory, and then the contextual subtheory. So that's why he called it hierarchic structure. So let's start with the component subtheory. So this is the core of Sternberg's theory. Sternberg advocates that a person's intellectual functioning is decided mainly by the components, that is elementary information processes operating on intellectual, basically operating on internal representation of objects or symbols. So he listed three types of components serving distinct functions. The first one is the metacognition, which represents higher executive processes employed for planning, monitoring, and regulating the execution of a task, such as analysis of the problem, selection of the strategies, monitoring of the possible solution, and interpretation of the feedback about performance, and etc. And the second one is about the performance component, which represents the actual mental processes used for the execution of a task, like task perception, concept identification, and response making, etc. And the third one is about the knowledge acquisition component, which represents the processes used in acquiring new information, such as synthesizing old ideas in some original and creative ways. And then the second sub-theory is the experimental theory. So by this sub-theory, Sternberg proposed that the intelligence represents the ability or capacity of an individual to deal with new task problems and solutions by adopting an information processing approach, and with this, with as little conscious effort as possible. So this means that to assess the degree of intelligence of an individual, we must give him the opportunity to perform new tasks or face novel situations or problems. And with this subtheory has basically led psychologists and researchers to identify specific tasks and solutions which may be utilized as reliable yardsticks for measuring intelligence. So the last one is the contextual subtheory. So basically, while proposing subtheory, Sternberg in 1985 declared that intelligence should be regarded as a mental activity directed towards purposive adaptation to and selection and shaping of real-world environment. Basically relevant to one's life. So this declaration made our intelligence to be a factor or a practical nature rather than a more abstraction. So he in fact sought the real function and purpose of human intelligence by considering it as a proper instrument for adaptation and the selection and shaping of one's environment. So the concept and structure of intelligence proposed by Sternberg thus went beyond the concept of IQ instrument and tradition cognitive processes that give greater freedom and power to an individual to solve his day-to-day problem and to become the master of his destiny. Then there is Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence. Howard Gardner of Harvard University has propounded a unique theory of intelligence called the theory of multiple intelligence, as it appeared in his 1983 book Frames of Mind. The theory of multiple intelligence, though it first appeared in his book in 1983. The book name was Frames of Mind, the theory of multiple intelligence. So, through his theory, Gardner challenged the notion of general intelligence, the small g, and then questioned the very basis of prevailing intelligence test by asking how an individual's intellectual capacities could be captured in a single measure of intelligence. So, indeed, he tried to give a broad base to the concept of intelligence and its measurement by providing a multiple frame. He asserted that human intelligence or cognitive competence can be better described as a set of an individual's multiple abilities, talents, and mental skills related to a multiple number of domains of knowledge in a particular culture setting. So, elaborating his view of intelligence further, he concluded that um, there are 7 independent types of intelligence that grow and develop differently in different people, depending upon their hereditary characteristics of environmental experience. And by calling them independent, Gardner meant that each intelligence is a relatively autonomous intellectual potential which is capable of functioning and independently of the others. So these different types of intelligence have been named by as linguistic intelligence, logical, mathematical, spatial, musical, bodily, kinesthetic, interpersonal, and intrapersonal intelligence. So we will be discussing these one by one. The first one is about the linguistic intelligence. So this type of human intelligence is responsible for all kinds of linguistic competence, abilities, talents, and skills available in human beings, and it can be best broken down into components like syntax, semantics, and pragmatics, as well as more school-oriented skills such as written or oral expressions and understanding. So this type of intelligence is most visible in professionals like lawyers, lecturers, writers, and a number of other professionals exploiting linguistic intelligence. Then the second one is about the logical mathematical intelligence. So basically, this type of intelligence is responsible for all types of abilities, talents, and skills in areas related to logic and mathematics. So it can be broken down into components like deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, scientific thinking, including solving of logical puzzles, carrying out calculation, and the like. So professionals like mathematicians, philosophers, physicians, or physicists, etc., are found to exhibit this type of intelligence in abundance. Then their third one is about the spatial intelligence. So basically, this type of intelligence is concerned with the abilities, talents, and skills involving the representation and manipulation of spatial configuration and relationship. And this is also true of professionals like land surveyors, architects, engineers, mechanics, navigators, sculptors, and chess players who are found to rely upon the spatial intelligence in their own way. So the fourth one is musical intelligence. As the name suggests, this type of intelligence covers the abilities, talents, and skills pertaining to the field of music. It may be well demonstrated through one's capacity for pitch discrimination, sensitivity to rhythm, texture, and timbre ability. So to hear themes in music and its most integrated form, the production of music through performance or composition. It is visible in a quite large proportion in professionals like musicians and composers. And the fifth one, which is the bodily kinesthetic intelligence, basically this type of intelligence it is concerned with the set of abilities, talents, and skills involved in using one's body or its various parts to perform skillful and purposeful movements. A child may be seen to demonstrate such intelligence in moving expressively in response to different musical and verbal stimuli or bending different body parts in organized sports. So, among professionals, dancers, athletes, and surgeons may be seen to demonstrate a high degree of bodily kinesthetic intelligence in their respective field. Then the sixth one is about the intrapersonal intelligence, and the seventh one is interpersonal intelligence. And the intrapersonal intelligence, this type of intelligence consists of an individual's ability to enable him to know himself. It includes knowledge and understanding of one's own cognitive strength, styles, and mental functioning, as well as one's feelings and range of emotions, and skills to utilize one's fund of knowledge in a practical situation. So, in brief, intrapersonal intelligence helps an individual to understand his own self by providing an insight into his total behavior and what he feels, thinks, or does. It is therefore said to be the most private of the intelligence that a person possesses, because on account of its secret and private nature, the access of this type of intelligence in an individual is only available through self-expression. For example, that is language, music, visual art, and similar other forms of expression. In our practical life, this type of intelligence is demonstrated by yogis, saints, and master of Zen, and etc. Whereas the interpersonal intelligence, which is the last one, the counterpart of intrapersonal intelligence in one's cognitive structure is interpersonal intelligence. Now, it consists of the abilities to understand individual other than oneself and the one's relation to others. Now, in addition, it includes the ability to act productively based on the understanding of others. So, the knowledge and the understanding of the others is the quality that is needed for the social interaction in one's day-to-day life. In practical life, this type of intelligence is most visible among psychotherapists, teachers, salespeople, politicians, and religious leaders. So, in this way, Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence provides a broad and comprehensive view of humans' ability, extending from linguistic and logical mathematical abilities, the type of skills that most addressed and valued in traditional school setting, also in minority of standardized intelligence tests. On the one hand, to interpersonal abilities on the other. So, out of these 7 types of intelligence, whereas the linguistic, logical, and mathematical and spatial abilities have been accepted widely as the type of and the types and the components of intelligence. So, the last 4 have been subject of great controversy as to whether they should be categorized as separate types of intelligence or as different talents. However, as far as the broader and global assessment of one's intellectual competencies and abilities is concerned, there is sufficient truth in the assertion of Gardner's theory that knowledge of all the 7 types of intelligence is essential for the true assessment of one's level of intellectual functioning. Basically, the other striking features and contribution of Gardner's theory of multiple Intelligence is its bold declaration that the concept of measurability is the best limited and at the worst educationally misleading. So this was the end of the video. If your concept is clear, you can like the video. If not, you can ask us in the comment section and we will be happy to help you out. Plus, if you're new to this channel, you can subscribe and click on the bell icon to stay notified whenever the video is uploaded. Plus, you can share the link of the video and channel with the family members and friends because sharing is caring. Until then, Allah Hafiz.